it was just tailoring an existing M100 panel to add a new estimated cost calculation. So they called a hyperservice, and that's out of the box, right? Yeah, no, that's out of the box. They didn't do anything creative to make that happen.
Well, it's creative.
Okay, actually, it's very creative. It's extremely creative.
We did a fairly extensive tailoring training, which should be available in the website. So you can contact them and get the information out. It's available with his demonstrations, what he has done, and stuff like that. So I'll ask Manny to disseminate the information.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So with NextAxiom Suite 9, we have a bunch of services that we've created. And in 7, is the migration going to automatically carry that over time?
When you say services, regardless of whether it is NXA or service development kit, it should actually migrate into JS9.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
And we tested that out in the last Ventex World, just so you know. I mean, we took services that we had built on Asset Suite 6 even, and we actually ran them on 9.
But
Just
that's the
fine.
intention. You need to hedge a little bit because we haven't tested everything. But that's clearly, and like Sandy says, they took some of the stuff that they had done years ago and tried it on 9.
Yeah, if you remember the last Ventex World, we had a little mobile app demo. We were going to all different Ventex applications, and yeah, we were just reusing existing hyperservices that we had built eons ago, and they worked fine out of the box, on the 9.0 environment. That was in our last. Good question, Adam. Other questions? Now, I know some of you are not as familiar with hyperservices, and I made a claim. I made a claim that your team could really understand the logic, and I want to brag a little bit about what Entergy did, because I mentioned an estimated cost calculation to see if an MR could be approved. And this is just an example of what a hyperservice looks like. So it is the graphical component. Oh, you're not seeing it, are you? The new PowerPoint, don't you love it? Let's see, maybe I need to shut it down. So I'll show you actually just some logic. And I know none of you probably, or half of you have never seen a hyperservice, and you probably don't know or care how to ever program, but I want you to see that you can actually step through and see the components very visually, and it's not, okay, if I can get it to show my side. There we go. So here's the component that was built, and you can see the inputs that went in, the user ID, the work order number, and the outputs that went out. Whether it was approved was the most important output that went out. And if we take a look at the program, here's what it looks like. See if you guys can, I know you don't know our platform, but let's see if we can see what it does. Reading from left to right, the first component that's called, the first hyperservice, is calculating the estimated cost for the work order. That's the first thing we do. The second step is the second hyperservice. We say, is the estimated cost within the approval limit? So there's a component for that. And then we flow out the response. If you take a look at the first component, you say, well, geez, how did you guys, how did Entergy calculate the estimated cost for the work order? And now you see the program for that. See, what you see is that your programs are just each step of your program, each step that you need to logically do is simply a reusable hyperservice. And I emphasize reusable because these are often reused in tons of places. It'll amaze you how often you reuse this hyperservice you built for one project, you'll use it for another. But if you look at the logic, what are we doing? We're getting the MRs on a work order. So you got a reusable block that can return all the MRs on a work order, and you've got a reusable block that gets a facility on a work order. And here we go. The building block, calculate total estimated cost. Look how brilliant this one is. I'll brag for them. It takes a list. There's a list of MRs. And I call this brilliant design. Why? Because you can pass in a single MR and it'll calculate the estimated cost. You can get all the MRs on a single task and it'll calculate the estimated cost, or you can grab all the MRs on a work order. See, this component doesn't care how you got the MRs. It just says, give me a list of MRs, one or more, and I'll calculate the estimated cost. So I mentioned they tailored the M100 panel, the work order panel. They called this hyperservice to populate that value, and this hyperservice executes, and on the M101, the same hyperservice executes. So it was reused in 2 places to do that. I won't walk you down this block anymore, but if you can keep going here and see the details. Like we look at the include stock preference, calculate the catalog estimated cost, and calculate the non-catalog estimated cost. And this is where they customize. They changed actually how the estimated cost is calculated. They actually added some new things that were not in there. And then we just glue them together. We just simply sum up the catalog and the non-catalog, and that gives you the total. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a little feeling for, even for those of you who haven't seen the programming language, you can actually walk through the blocks. You've had no training, I'm helping you a little bit, but you can walk through the building blocks and see the components and the steps that are taken, even how the approval limit was done. The nice thing is once you have it in this nice, agile, adaptable layer, you can start adding all sorts of business logic. And this was important to Entergy, and here's why, because they could have customized COBOL to do this. What was important was they were putting this out to the users for the first time. They knew that the users were going to come back and probably ask for more, but they weren't sure what they were going to ask for until they played with it. So, and some of the things they might ask is, for this estimated cost calculation and seeing if it's within the approval limit, and if we should auto-approve the MR, maybe I want to consider if there's the critical equipment. So if I'm on a task or work order that has the critical equipment associated with it, maybe I want to approve that MR and not be so stringent, in my rules. So now they can really put very workplace-specific, very Entergy-specific logic in there, and they've got a nice adaptation layer to do that. And what's more, this is going to migrate, when they go to 9.0. So anyway, Ventix is giving you a lot of ways to externalize your customizations. This is one of them. I hope that it did inform. I'm sorry?
You had mentioned that you don't actually do any coding, but there's no blocks that you can keep drilling down where you can write simple logic that would execute. Like I saw your calculator one, that was close.
You can write phenomenally complex logic, but it's graphical. So a lot of our innovations are how do you take extremely complex things? Like if you want to show attributes as if they're fields, you've got to actually pivot that data before you put it in Asset Suite. That's pretty hard to do usually. You can do it in 2 minutes flat. So you do it graphically, but you do it in 2 minutes flat. So
I'm not talking about data transformation. I'm talking about either true math functions
or
if then type logic.
All of it. Yeah. Yeah, so formulas, but no, every logic, if, else, then, everything, not just the rudimentary constructs you have in any programming language, like looping and recursion, and, if, ors, nots, else's, but you've got even more because we've automated a lot more than what a basic programming language will give you. And that's where the productivity comes in, so that's where, I think the good thing is almost impossible claim to believe, but the beautiful thing is we've got so many customers that have built so many complex things. I mean, really complex stuff here. There's nothing simple, Simon, about the solutions they're building, and never resorting to code. They are programming, though. They are programming, but they're just not doing it with code and syntax. And I haven't shown you those aspects. I'm sure the techie folks that don't know it are really, would benefit from me showing it. But I'm keeping this high level. But that's where the innovation has come in, and it's different. It's not like you've ever seen it before.
That's a good enough answer. So you could use your logic or your special math function that does some baseline and write a field.
Yeah. Calculate the number of days between 2 dates, any function you can imagine, and it's extensible, but exactly.